Welcome to this Introduction to the Governance Handbook for Coastal Wetlands in the Mediterranean. We're all familiar with the basic facts. The Mediterranean region is one of the world's hotspots for biodiversity, and coastal wetlands in particular have a disproportionate importance for biodiversity and for human well-being. And they're crucial for the sustainable management of water resources in terms of both quality and quantity. And they're of particular importance for mitigating climate change. In fact, what can be said that hasn't already been said about Mediterranean wetlands, the wonderful diversity, their tremendous environmental and climate change services, and so on and so on. But what I want to talk about here are some of the other realities of daily life for coastal wetland managers, whether in the Mediterranean or indeed globally. And that is the daily balancing of complex social, economic and political interests that often appear to have very little to do with the biodiversity and conservation of wetlands. Balancing these complex and often competing interests is governance. Balancing them well and in ways that benefits our wetlands is good governance. And governance is what this new handbook is all about. Its recommendations and its guidance are based on experience from all around the world, along with sites around the Mediterranean. So let's take a look at these competing social, economic and political interests vying for our attention. They include the legitimate interests of the local community and traditional users of the wetlands, the pressures from tourism, whether it's the mass tourism of the use of the beach or the demands from the new ecotourism sector. Then there are the development pressures, particularly along the coastal strip. And we have damaging activities from beyond our boundaries, whether this is cumulative pollution or from agriculture and urbanisation, or interference in the river flow or coastal processes. And if all that wasn't enough, we all have to worry about money. The money and funding we need to keep going, to keep the show on the road. And wetlands certainly aren't immune from politics. Local and national politicians expect their say and to have their seat around the table. And now we have the need to fit the management of the wetland into the wider catchment, the neighbouring coastal zone, and your local inshore coastal waters. And last but not least, there is a bewildering array of international, national and local conventions. And these are the most relevant ones listed here in the handbook. And these range from global conventions, including the Ramsar, Man and Biosphere and the Conventions on Biological Diversity and many others, through to the Mediterranean region, such as the ICZM, SPA and biodiversity protocols. And then of course there's European and national legislation, as well as the plethora of local ordinances and spatial plans. And all this means one thing: considerable time spent away from site management. It means meetings and more meetings. It means reporting, consulting and planning, and then planning for even more meetings. We'd love to spend our time out in the field managing the environment, carrying out works to make it better. But it's those other things that keep managers like me awake at night. the things that take up so much of our time. Dealing with these competing issues is a skill that most of us have little, if any, training for. But governance is not an option. As the handbook states, good, effective and equitable governance is essential for the future sustainability of coastal ecosystems. Put simply though, governance is all about who holds power, who has the power to make decisions, how effective and efficient those decisions are, and how accountable are the decision makers. And if there's one message that I want you to take away from this video, is that the better we do our governance, the better we do our management. And the better our governance, the more sustainable our important sites will be. We recognise in our guidance that you don't have limitless resources or the luxury of time for deep thoughts on these abstract issues. So what we've done is we've provided a simple architecture for creating the conditions for future work and for prioritising decisions when time is pressing. And we've based our methodology on the tried and tested multidisciplinary approach developed in and for the Mediterranean. We show you how to get the basics right, the preparations that should underpin the future governance of your site, such as how to create a new or modify your existing governance structure and how to make it work, who you need to invite to the table, the rules for your governance body, and how the governance of your site fits into the governance of the wider river basin and coastal zone. And the handbook even extends to those sites that transcend national boundaries or those that have complex multinational river basins. What we've done is provide a simple, easy to follow self-assessment process to help you identify your strengths and weaknesses. It guides you through a journey from setting the foundations for governance through to developing an action plan, to delivering results and changing behaviours, right through to achieving that common vision for a sustainable future. We also see governance as a creative force. Based on the IUCN's Protected Area Governance and Management Guidance, we set an even higher challenge, showing how your governance can, in the IUCN's words, learn, evolve and meet its role and responsibilities in ways that are timely and intelligent. The IUCN refers to this as governance vitality. And these are the elusive intangibles of governance. These are the secret ingredients that add spice to an otherwise mechanistic process. Think of governance as this giant iceberg. In successful governance, what you can see above the waterline are the usual tangible aspects, things that can easily be seen and measured: the steering group, funding, research and monitoring programs, the management plan, etc. But in below the waterline are no less important but much less tangible qualities. But without these hidden qualities, governance would merely be a bureaucratic exercise, a mechanistic process. And these intangibles include wisdom, they include empowerment, creativity, integration and representativity, and even liveliness. And these qualities share a common problem: the near impossibility of measuring them objectively. But we argue they can be measured subjectively as matters of opinion. And finally, the handbook gives you a simple planning tool, one which can be tailored to the specificities of your wetland, wherever you are in the Mediterranean and whatever your political, cultural and legal context. And it allows you to sort out the important priorities from all the other distracting noise. We've also provided a host of practical tips and guidance based on the considerable real-world experience of the handbook team, along with experience from around the globe. And we've also drawn very heavily on the experience of 3 different pilot areas from around the Mediterranean. The Gar el Mela lagoon in Tunisia, the Oristano Gulf in Sardinia, and the Buna River Veripolium protected landscape on Albania's border with Montenegro. So who is this handbook for? Well, it's designed for all those with the responsibility for coastal wetlands, for those actually managing the sites on a day-to-day basis, or for those in local and national government. And it can be used by different stakeholders, including local communities, civil society organisations, government agencies, or international organisations. In fact, anyone with an interest in these important protected sites. We've designed it for sites with long-established governance or with brand new structures. And what it does, it recognises that there can't be a one-size-fits-all governance model in a region as diverse as the Mediterranean. So what we've done is we've distilled this process down into a very simple 3-step methodology, an off-the-shelf, do-it-yourself governance kit. Stage 1 is preparation. Like all good recipes, it begins with that preparation stage, the basic infrastructure of governance on which everything else rests. Your stakeholders, your steering group or committee, and your partners. In particular, how you fit into the governance of the wider river basin. And in stage 2, we move on to mapping, the mapping of where you are now, your status quo, to provide a starting point for planning a way forward, deciding what are your priorities, and then designing an action plan. And to make it easy, we've designed that rapid assessment and planning tool in which you can very quickly measure your status quo, your governance strengths, and your governance weaknesses. Using a simple traffic light system, in half an hour or less, you can measure up how you and your wetland shape up. Think of it as a governance boot camp. And from here, you can go on to draw up a forward plan using the templates that we've provided. And stage 3, probably for the first time in the world, we've provided a way you can measure the vitality of your governance that I mentioned earlier. This is the excellence scorecard, and it helps you unleash those intangibles that lie hidden below that governance iceberg's waterline. So, rather than seeing governance as something just to be endured, as an unwelcome burden, we hope you see good governance as a positive force, one that will in turn lead to far better management of your site. And this handbook has been specifically designed to help you and your partners as custodians of what are, after all, some of the world's most important reservoirs of biodiversity. So please download the handbook and its accompanying self-assessment and planning tool from the MedWet website. And please let us have your feedback. Thank you.